Hey everybody, so here's a final video for the semester. We need to take a look at how to take all these ideas and tools that we've looked at and combine them into a single project that allows us to make a sound responsive animation. This is not a completed project, but this is just my using the tools I've shown you to approach creating a project that employs many of them and how to think about structuring that project, which is something that we haven't really addressed yet. But you're going to see a lot of familiar elements here. So let's just look around the screen. Up here in the upper left, we have a main toggle that turns on rendering, and I have my render window here, and familiar messages to turn on and off gravity, a handle. I'm sending the frame impulse out of the middle outlet of jit.world to send it to objects like avg tilde. Right below it, we have a pretty standard camera, which has a receive camera so that messages can be sent to the camera from other locations. It has a position slider that we can use to change the position of the camera, and a reset button that resets it. And because this has a var name, we can presume that this is saved into a pattern storage somewhere else in the patch. Here we've got the sound player that we've just seen in the recent tutorials. So going inside of that, we see a very standard sound player structure where I have multiple audio stems. And here's one new element. If you don't want to have to drag and drop your sound files onto your SF plays every time, you can use the @audioFile attribute and just name the file. If it's in your project, it'll be found and automatically loaded. So I have @audiofiledrums.aiff, @audiofilebass.aiff, and @audiofilearp.aiff. And because I've named them inside the SF play object, they'll be automatically loaded when the patch is loaded. I've given myself a couple of convenience buttons here. I have a pause button, but I also have a seek zero pause. That's a rewind and pause button combined. Cue point jump buttons here, so I can jump to 17 seconds, 22 seconds, 29 seconds, and 34 seconds in my song, because those are moments when important things happen. And the reason why I have this times 1000 here is just so I don't have to think in milliseconds. It's a lot easier to see 17 and understand it means 17 seconds than it is to see 17,000 and understand that means 17 seconds. And then here I have my send time outside my patcher, just so I can see how much time has elapsed. I have a second counter here. So if I start this, you can see that my elapsed time is here. This pause button and seek zero pause, the send phys gravity 0, -9.8, these 17, 22, 29 buttons. These are convenience buttons that I created to help me move around and adjust things while I'm editing and creating. Once the video is finished, a single button will just play the entire thing without any further intervention from me. So any buttons that are left here are left over from my process of creating the piece. Over here on the right, we see our pattern storage and auto pattern, and then I've just made, again, grids of buttons for convenience. These buttons are my store buttons. The green buttons are my recall buttons, so that I can easily recall all my various camera position cues with a green button. And if I want to adjust something and store one, I just make the adjustment and click the corresponding red button to store it. You don't have to do this, but it's a very handy tool for accessing multiple cues. Up here, we see my main timeline for cues. We transition from Q1 to Q2 over 10 seconds when the elapsed time in the music reaches 3 seconds. So we can see that happen. That cue begins and we see the camera begin to move. And then as the music continues to play, there's going to be another cue transition at 13 seconds, another one at 30 seconds, another one at 35 seconds, another one at 45 seconds. And you can see the lengths of these transitions vary. So at 3 seconds, we get a transition from Q1 to Q2 over 10 seconds. So this is just finishing when this one happens. At 13 seconds, we transition from Q2 to Q3 over 5 seconds. And so these transitions with their times just go into P line, where there's a line object that drives the cue transitions in the pattern storage. What else do we have in here? We have a subpatcher that has some lights in it. including a moving light that you'll see when I play the whole piece. We're inside a surrounding cube, and this is one of the few things that I used in this project that I hadn't had a chance to show you yet in tutorials. I used the fourth inlet of jit.gl.material, the emission inlet, to create this glowing background inside a cube, basically functioning as its own light source, and it needs its new additional message, mat_emission, with a brightness value for the internal light source of the object. So I'm saying mat_emission 0.5, 0.5, 0.51, meaning it's emitting a half brightness self-illumination. And then the pattern coming in the fourth inlet is this colored background pattern that we see here. The final section is sort of the main guts of the piece, where we have a patcher for these falling blocks, a patcher for the kick circle, which is that thing that you're seeing there, and then a patcher for the star sphere that comes later in the piece and the bass spheres that come when the bass drops. So let's just watch the piece and see how it goes.